Yeah, because I feel like you cannot call yourself specialized if you're not good enough. Hi everyone, sorry for the long wait. Here we are again with Puzzle with your boy, Salvi.
Elena.
Omer.
And Trisha.
And today, our plan is to talk about well-roundedness versus being specialized. And my first question to you guys is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being well-rounded / specialized, and which one is better? And maybe start by introducing yourself as either well-rounded or specialized.
Right. So I think I'm very much more a well-rounded person because I feel like really interested in a lot of different fields, and not only academically, but in terms of sports, in terms of music, in terms of art, and I try to take a lot of a diversity of classes here as well, and that's just something that feels very natural to me. And so I think that being well-rounded has a lot of advantages, mostly because everything that you do, you learn from, and every action informs your proficiency at whatever you do after that. So for example, playing a musical instrument has a lot of really positive effects on your brain. It can increase your memory. And if you think about an advantage like that, that can help you in a class, or that can help you in any other kind of competition. So I think the more we try to get out of our little bubbles and expand, we not only become more informed in everything that we do, but we also just become better people overall. I think it's really important to go out of your way and just try to learn as much as possible, because along with going into many different fields of study, or sports or music or whatever, you also are opened up to a lot of different communities, and you always learn from that and become more open and tolerant. So those are some of the advantages I think there are of being well-rounded.
Yeah, I don't know how to classify myself. I personally think I can get very into things and want to know all the details of some random, stuff in math sometimes. But then I'm also very well-rounded in the sense that I get very passionate about pretty much everything. I really enjoy music classes. I had to take that in summer, which is very different to my normal maths, and I guess philosophy now is my normal as well. So yeah, I wouldn't really say either, and of course I think they both have their advantages, but it's all in relation to what you want to actually do with yourself, what you think you like in the moment, and also what you think you'll like in the future. So if you are pretty sure that you want to dedicate a lot of time to getting very good at or knowing a lot about one certain thing for your future as well, your future self, then by all means I think specialization's the way to go. But well-roundedness also just feels very healthy, because I think it helps keep you connected to other areas that you may neglect. For instance, when it comes to, say, programming, if I spend a lot of time just coding in a weekend, like this weekend, it feels kind of terrible. I'm also just not, I wouldn't classify myself as a programmer necessarily, but I don't enjoy dedicating myself so wholly to just one thing. I think life often feels
so maybe you are a little bit more of a well-rounded guy.
I would hesitate to say that.
I think you're a well-rounded person, but with the ability to be to specialize very much into many things, kind of, right? When you decide that you want to specialize into something,
right,
you can really go into it, right?
Yeah.
What about you?
What about me? Well, I think I'm a much more well-rounded person, for sure. I actually think that, with many philosophies, like Greeks and Asian philosophies and things like that, ancient philosophies, there is this thing of having to be balanced, right? And that the ideal individual would have to be balanced or something, with the body, the mind, the many chakras or something like that, right? And many things like that. So I think that there is this sense of balance coming in as something healthy and something positive, through which you should live your life. That being said, and balance is something that well-roundedness really is associated with. I feel it's in the nature of being well-rounded to
Yeah, just before we
You
get
should,
like really
please.
into I think I'm a well-rounded guy, mainly because I have I try to explore many interests in different fields. I'm just generally interested in many fields. However, I found my interest very recently, and since I found my interest, it's really hard for me to work outside it. And this is why I would say, I've been a very well-rounded person trying to be a more specialized one, because I have found something that I like especially enjoy. So maybe that makes the conversation for us a little different, because I don't know. And what do I think? I wanted to just to jump into it already. You were mentioning the Greeks in terms of balance, and I feel like at the time of the ancient Greeks, maybe that was a thing that made sense because it's a very primitive society still that doesn't really know much. Nowadays, we're in a much larger society, right? I don't know, by how much the world population has multiplied itself. Heck, we also have different continents now. At the time of the Greeks, they just lived in Europe, right? And so at that time, I feel like the personal balance was huge. Now I feel like we're also achieving that balance through society, not just in the individual. And so I don't know. I'm not saying that it's better, that the whole society serves for this balance, but I'm saying that's the way we tend to be this nowadays.
Well, but they sought balance within the society as well. They thought that the society was a big individual kind of, and that the society would have to have the many layers that the individual had.
So to your point about society being an individual, though, but it's interesting because what do the individual roles serve in the society? Is each individual supposed to be well-rounded so that the entire society is well-rounded, or can groups of individuals be specialized so in the grand scheme of things society is well-rounded? I think that doesn't answer. Yeah.
I think it's the second one. I think it's the
Right.
same for the ancient Greeks and nowadays, in a sense, because, well, I'm just thinking of politics. No, or what was Plato's first Republic? Right, he gives the three specifications or the three different categories of what people should be. Forgetting the names. Do you remember?
The Guardians,
The
producers,
Guardians.
and the Philosopher King.
So that was all these people being very specialized. Philosopher kings having a certain level of intellect and
It's just one
capability.
person.
No,
Yeah.
the philosophers, and then there is the philosopher king among philosophers.
Yes.
Right, and even now, I think, so back then it was three big categories, especially in Plato's view, which obviously wasn't completely practical. But now it's gotten to such a level that people focus for decades and decades on a tiny little thing that might not even make a difference to the world. And so in response to your question, it's we have so many more people in the world, and they're all so hyper focused that altogether it makes one well-rounded world.
But if you think about it, in the Republic, right? Who is the philosopher king, right? It's someone that can kind of take everything together and organize a society, so that all of these specialized people can work together, right? It's the philosophers being in the top.
Yeah.
Philosophers are by nature kind of well-rounded in a way, right? If you think about it, intellectually well-rounded, but
Right.
intellectually well-rounded, not exactly they're not. Well, actually, they are well-rounded in everything because the philosophers have to be trained
Yeah.
since early on in every single thing, and you only reach the stage of the philosopher if you were once a warrior, you were once a producer, and everything like that. So you reach the stage of the philosopher in which you have a general understanding of everything, and the philosopher king then is the most wise person that can organize everything and kind of put everything together. So it seems it's very important, yes, for you to have specialized people in society, but you also need the people that can put everything together.
Well, in terms of necessity, then, it seems that both are necessary. I would, expanding on that argument, maybe it makes sense then to divide this necessity into not, someone else who tells you should be specialized or well-rounded, but rather, essentially from within, being able to tell if you want to be more of a person who chooses for himself, or going like, choosing for yourself to be more specialized. And then either way, I feel like there should be a more or less equal distribution. You know, the problem with Plato's argument then is like there is just one philosopher king, and there is just one person who can reach this truth. Everyone else seems to be specialized, right?
No, the philosophers themselves are specialized as well. Like they're a whole category, right?
But wasn't your point that like the philosopher king?
Well, he's the capstone of all of that. But I mean, there are other specialized people.
Oh, we're super lost. Because
No, well, I
we're
haven't
talking
heard
about
this
slower,
before.
yeah.
Um,
yeah.
Oh, right.
Okay.
No, but it's okay. I'm still picking up the ideas.
Yeah.
It's interesting about what you say about the philosopher. I definitely feel that in my classes, for instance, because, for instance, even my professor currently in my class, epistemology, is he double majored in math and philosophy, and a lot of his examples are math-based, which helps me a lot because then I'm less lost with the philosophy stuff, because that's like where I have my roots, kind of. But yeah, I completely see that and feel it in the classroom. People use examples from all over the place, and I think that is evidence for the fact that well-roundedness is a very powerful tool, because it's also true in the sense that you can be thrown into most scenarios and have a general idea of what to do if you're well-rounded. Whereas if you're very specialized, you're maybe very good at some things, but otherwise pretty lost. But then it's a question of where are you going to dwell? You're going to dwell on these very specialized cases and therefore you're well suited.
I think there has to be something that needs to be taken into account, which is time. In order to be specialized, no matter what you do, you need to start very early. Because the whole point of being specialized is that you're really good at it. If you're really bad at something that you're specializing in, then that's a problem. That's a problem because, you're not useful to anyone. And if you're not useful to anyone, I feel like you're not going to value necessarily what you're doing, right? Like no one likes to not be good at something. I feel like there is a time for you to become specialized. For example, if you do a sport, and that's probably the easiest example. If you do a sport, you have to start at a very early age, because if you want to start a sport when you're 30, there's no way in hell that you're going to become like an Olympic swimmer, for example. Or,
Sure,
for example, if you play,
extreme
no, there's not. It's not. Like if you want to be the best violinist in the world, you cannot start if you're 30. Like the best violinists start when they're 6 or 7.
But that's the
Right,
best
this is
violinist.
exactly
Yeah, the best
To be
violinist.
specialized, you have to be the leader in your field. You can.
Yeah,
figure
but
it out.
there is a time to it. There is a time to it. I don't think you can become specialized if you're like too old. Versus, I think you can become well-rounded at pretty much, I wouldn't say necessarily any age, but at a much later age.
I think
So maybe like strategically thinking about it, maybe you have an advantage if you become specialized early on and then get into like more well-rounded places.
I have to say, I really disagree.
I don't know. It's a thought. It's not like yeah.
I
You know what I
think
mean?
university is a place where people can specialize a lot, and up until then, it doesn't really matter what you do, because a lot of people also come to university and take subjects they've never taken before. Like,
Yeah.
In terms of me in computer science, I did 2 years of it in high school. I really didn't understand it
Right.
deeply. I understood the logic of things, but I didn't know how to code at all. And coming here now, doing this as a major, I wouldn't call myself specialized either, but I can certainly see myself becoming specialized if I was to say pursue like a master's or PhD.
Yeah.
And that's a skill I've only really honed in on the last like 6 years.
Well, it depends on the field, then I would say.
I think
Yes.
the idea of the American system of education in college, liberal art education and stuff like that, the philosophy behind it is that, it's 4 years that you would be able to be well-rounded in a way, and explore many things, so that you then find something that you want to specialize in, right? Because I don't agree that you have to specialize since early on, and I think that being well-rounded is something that is much more a product of like a sum of many years of it's kind of associated with sort of wisdom in a way, right? Like the more wise you are, the older you are, more well-rounded, because the more things you have seen in life, the more things you have heard and all of that kind of thing, right? But specializing in something, I mean, the whole point of going to a PhD, in the American system, many people do something very different in college, and then slowly discover that they have a passion for something, and go into a PhD, and then start a career which is extremely specialized.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because like our end goal is not to be well-rounded in the school. It's to be well-rounded for 4 years and then specialize. And all the faculty that we really admire are like Nobel Prize winners in like very specific research fields. So is that okay, or should society direct us to say like it's okay to just be well-rounded your whole life? Because I don't think the university does. Also, yeah, I also disagree because, well, do you guys know Malcolm Gladwell?
No.
Yeah. So he's
Outliers.
yes. In Outliers, he says this fact that you can only become really good at something / specialize when you spend 10,000 hours practicing it. And if you calculate that, it's 20 hours a week for 10 years. So it's a long time.
Yes.
But if you take it as that number, you could start at like age 30, practice all the time, and be specialized. You might not be the best in the world.
Right.
Right. Although I must, yeah, he uses the definition for mastery.
Yeah.
But if we want to like equate that to
Right.
specialization, that's fine. But I think that's something we also need to address because you saying specialized is saying like the leader in your field.
Yeah, because I feel like you cannot call yourself specialized if you're not good enough.
But what is good enough is my question.
Yeah, good enough. I feel like there has to be a certain degree of objectivity to the term, where someone else, needs of your service in order to. Because the whole point of being someone who's specialized, as I said before, is I feel like someone who can be of use to someone else. If you're not of use to someone else, you can't call yourself specialized, because I think the definition of being specialized is enough about it that you should be able to essentially, because otherwise it's a bit of a contradiction. I feel like if you don't know enough about something, then how can you be an expert in it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, an expert is different than specialized. I think what you're saying is
But
being an
yeah,
expert.
but it goes hand in hand. Like,
No,
do you know? Well,
Think
okay.
about a student who's
Yeah.
applying to college, right?
Yeah.
Colleges think of well-rounded students and specialized students. A
Right.
specialized student might be a kid who's like really, really good at math, but that doesn't
Right.
mean they like teach other people or they're a leader.
But they're a lot better.
Yeah,
Relative
But they
to-
might
they're
not be.
better than
Yeah,
themselves at other fields.
But they're not.
I
they're
think
not useful to society yet. Like the fact that
Exactly.
they're still specialized.
They are still specialized, but I think like they see a potential in them to become specialized in a field, and that essentially will put them in a position where they can be of help to everyone else.
Well, but for example,
Right.
like
I don't
the whole like industrialization and stuff like that, like the people that would just do
Yeah.
one work, they're specialized,
Yeah.
right? But they're not
Yeah.
experts. Like
Yeah.
Then you can't classify anyone. Like anyone who's not a leader is well-rounded, but
Yeah.
they're
No,
not.
that's right. That's right.
But
I'm thinking on my feet as well, right? It's
Yeah.
not like I have a
Yeah.
position here that I'm defending. I'm
No,
just
you're
thinking
right.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing that I think you said was really interesting was the idea of use. And the fact that, like, I have a friend who was thinking of becoming a scientist, but he decided not to because he thought, like, I'm going to spend so many years writing a paper that, like, hopefully might get cited in some other paper. You don't know. Like, is that useful? Is that worth it?
I think it's difficult to argue for whether things are worth it or not because it's very subjective to each specialist or not specialist, I suppose, who regrets not specializing. Or at least in my case, I think I have some experience in specializing in one of the least useful things, a video game. I've spent roughly 60 days playing Call of Duty, one specific Call of Duty, and I think hit a skill cap in the sense that I don't really see much new information to learn which would improve my ability at the game. Apart from, so as a result, I feel like I have specialized in that, or I have become an expert or somewhat achieved mastery of that game. Cool, right? Do I regret it? In some ways, yes, because what use is it to me now that I'm good at some niche game which is hardly even played anymore? But at the same time, I don't regret it because I now can project, or I can more vividly see what it's like to be really good at something, or to hit a cap where you can see all the information. And I think that's powerful, and I don't regret that because of that.
That's very interesting. But I know.
Yeah, I wanna transition slowly to another topic about being well-rounded or specialized, which is, and the way I'm gonna make this transition is, I think there are two things we talked about mainly, which is one is of it being of use to society, and the other thing is more how is it of use to you. And in terms of this being of use to yourself, I feel like, and that's really what, in terms of an individual, it's all about, right? Because it's about your life and your happiness and your fulfillment. Does well-roundedness come from within, right? Is it something innate, and therefore does it make you happier or more fulfilled to be well-rounded or specialized because that's what you have a natural tendency towards, or how do you end up with being either well-rounded or specialized, essentially?
I think that's very interesting. I think that my feeling, my instinct is that it is somewhat innate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that certain people have more of a tendency to it's kind of genetic, I feel like. I don't know. For example, I have this example of, since early on, since very early, I knew many math professors, right? My dad's a math professor. I had a mentor that was a math professor, many people in the department and everything. And it was very interesting to compare different mathematicians, which were all really good, but which were so different between themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my mentor was extremely specialized person in the sense that his life was basically, he would play the violin and be really try really hard at being good at that, and he would do math, and those were the things that he did in his life and in his days, and he was very specialized in those things. And my dad, on the other hand, he's a person that works so much more through bursts of inspiration. And outside of those bursts of inspiration, he wants to know about sort of everything, and he talks about history, politics, philosophy, and watches movies and all of that kind of thing. And the ways in which he sort of seeks these bursts of inspiration are maybe the connections that he sees with other things in life, And I think that I really got that from him. So I'm really similar to him. And I feel like there's a very genetic component to that, that for me, it's all about sort of the lens through which you see everything. Maybe some people have a sort of passion for something, and so they want to become very specialized in that specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
But other people might have a passion to see the most that they can through a specific lens, right? So for example, many philosophers have different questions that they sort of specialize in, but these are questions that are kind of maybe they're more of lenses actually, that they can look at so many different fields and subjects through a certain lens, right? And I think that, it's really all about, everyone is a bit specialized and a bit general, a bit well-rounded, right? And it's kind of you have to find what your passion, what your individual self leans towards, right? The proportion, how is it,
I think it's not that innate. If you are well-rounded, or at least for me personally, it's not. I'm a person that is very interested in a lot of things, like I said at the very beginning of the podcast. And for me, it's also very easy to get enthusiastic, about a lot of different topics and subjects. And especially my freshman year, I tried I'm in Columbia College, and I did the entire C's core. Right, I took physics, chemistry, biology, philosophy, economics, literally all across the board. And that's because I easily get enthusiastic. I'm enthusiastic about all these things. However, as I explained before, I delved into these things and I was happy doing them. And I was never really, and I was jumping from one thing to the next because I never really had a passion that was well defined. And at that time I thought, well, I'm just a guy that's interested in a lot of things. But I thought that because I didn't really find a thing that I was really, really passionate about. And now I started doing biology and chemistry, and I've been doing this for a year, and at a very, courses that are famously hard, the Intro to Bio Mauschwitz course, which is very famous nationally actually. It's a hard course. and very informative, and I really delved into it, and I was like, I really, really like this, and I can see myself dedicating, years of my life to it, because I have such a deep interest that is so rooted in myself. And once I found that, it's actually hard for me now to find the interest in the other things that were more easy for me to explore, like computer science, which I did during the summer. All of a sudden, I was taking computer science. I was like, oh my god, I would much rather be learning about molecules and like enzymes right now than about computer science, because I had found essentially what I wanted to. And so for me, it's more about, if you are lucky enough to find at some point in your life something that moves you to like become specialized, that's the point where it's, where you can like dig into this path.
And do you believe everyone has some sort of passion? Because it's it's an impossible argument to counter, because if one says they don't have a passion,
they haven't just found it, right? Well, it's hard to say. I think the strategy there essentially is to never stop. Like if one is well-rounded, right? Then essentially what one can just do is just keep being well-rounded and keep trying new things until maybe eventually one finds what one wants to specialize in.
But I think that even though you can go to a specific path and be sort of specialized, it doesn't change whether your personality is well-rounded or not. Do you understand? I think that it's something about the personality. Even if you go through a path of specialization, for example, my father, which I just said, right? He is a mathematician. He studied for many, many, many years, but he's still a well-rounded individual because that's like his personality.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it is personality. Yeah. Well, in terms of passion, I think like everyone or most people can have little bursts of passion. Like everyone thinks like, wow, this is so cool.
Really?
But
I wonder.
Yeah. But it tends to wear off often. It's like very hard to stay disciplined and practice those 10,000 hours. And so I think discipline can be taught to a certain degree, especially if your parents like teach you to be really disciplined, or the environment that you're in makes you do that. But discipline, I think, is also innate in a lot of senses and genetic, as you said. So there's people who are type A versus type B. Like my mom, for example, is super type A, and so when she decided that she wanted to like design a house, she was like, I don't have any background in architecture, but I'm just gonna learn everything I can about this. As a project that took like 10 years, and she did it. Whereas I would never have the discipline to do that. So there's like type A people versus type B people. I think there's also like extroversion and introversion, because if you want to be very specialized, like my brother is a squash player and he practices like many, many hours a day. And you have to give up like a lot of social interactions and hanging out with other people. And as an extrovert, I couldn't do that. So it's just like, how much discipline do you have? How much can you compromise? And like, how much can you align that with the innate traits?
Right. I think that's very interesting. I think what you're kind of implying is that there are so many limiting factors which would stop one from being specialized.
Yeah.
It's whether it's a characteristic thing, whether it's just other priorities, other passions.
Okay, I want to draw something, because this is what I had this discussion once with someone in Argentina, and they were telling me about how they were starting really they got into one thing, which was windsurfing. They were really passionate about it. Like all of a sudden, they got really, really good really quickly, and then slowly they started getting more unmotivated.
Right.
And so we drew a chart with it, and this is the chart. And the chart essentially is essentially, this is knowledge.
Wait, it's flipped.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Like
I see
this is the
it's
bottom
text.
part is knowledge. The bottom part is knowledge, and then this is essentially your enthusiasm, or enthusiasm, happiness, whatever you want to call it, right? I write like a doctor. My apologies. So knowledge and enthusiasm, and what we came to the conclusion of was essentially when you know very little about something, you are oftentimes very pumped, because you're like, oh my god, this is this new thing, it's crazy good, I want to try it, and then you try it, and it's very easy for you to become better at it because you know nothing, right? And so really quickly you learn and you're like, bam, this is like the happiest you can get. And then the more, right now, not the happiest you can get, let me continue. So you're just like super hyped, right?
Yeah.
But then you start learning more. So you move to like forward, like I should draw this here, you know nothing, right? Zero.
Right.
But then you learn more about the topic, and more 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 and more. Wait, you learn more and more and more and more and more and more, and then you reach this point.
Okay.
And see what I did here is, the more you know, the less enthusiastic you get about it.
Sure.
Why? For two reasons we came to the conclusion. One was because things get a lot harder, and so it's way more difficult for you to get better at it. And so you get more unmotivated because like the harder it gets, the more you have to learn. And it's like you have been doing this for so long and you're seeing very little progress. You compare your progress to before, you get more unmotivated. It's very hard. And so you hit this point, and this is the lowest enthusiasm. And when we said, well, most people at this point is when they drop something, right? Because it's like, you know, F it, like I'm not gonna do this, I'm out. However, we said the strongest people are people that can go past this point, and they learn.
Strongest or most passionate.
Yeah, like you are like, okay, you know, I'm just gonna grind through it essentially. Through
That's
this
a
point.
very like personality trait.
Wait, maybe.
Okay.
But let me continue like to finish this concept. So, and then it's like you go past this point, right? And you pass this point and you learn more. This is the point where most people drop. You learn more and you become more of an expert. You learn more and 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 more. And we said probably once you learn so much, and this is maybe 99% of people that don't know this, right? You're this part of this 1% who knows it. You're probably at that point where you know so much about the topic that you are one of the people who can contribute to it. And at that point, you are probably very, very happy. And it happened to both of us because both of us had reached sort of like, had experienced these curves in our lives where there comes a point where you have, I don't know, either done something that you're very passionate about. In his case, it was windsurfing. In my case, it was the organization I made in Argentina, where you become so involved and you know so much about a certain topic that you become very enthusiastic again, the more you know. And so like we had this like knowledge versus enthusiasm curve. I just wanted to bring it out.
I think that this is very interesting, but I think that I don't agree that this is necessarily always the case at all. I think that you can maybe draw this in many ways, and I think it depends so much in the person.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so it depends so much. Like, for example, in my experience, many times like with zero, I'm actually like maybe here, and then like the more I have to engage in something,
Right.
in order to be like actually passionate about it. And so like maybe we'll start like something like this, right?
Right.
And then like maybe I'll start going down because I'll start feeling like is this actually really worth it? You know, like I'll start thinking, oh, you know what, this was interesting at first, but now I'm starting to see if this is really relevant. I feel like so many people in history have thought about the same thing in different ways, and where am I really getting to, you know? So then I start like going down, right? And then maybe like here I'll stop, and maybe here I'll go somewhere else, and I'll like give up on that, you know? But then if I continued maybe and started drawing connections to other things and maybe trying to see it and to continue being passionate about it, if I'm able to like see reasons why to continue being passionate about it, then maybe I can like become more engaged and like go back. And so sometimes it can oscillate, you know.
Right. Yes, I think in my case as well, I don't think it's so easily defined for like I don't think it can be generalized for every case at all. I think at least with Call of Duty, I was pretty excited by it first. That's my thing. Pretty excited by it first, and then I got pretty frustrated, like because you start seeing enough information that you start to appreciate the severity of your mistakes. You start to appreciate the severity of your mistakes because you're aware of things that you could be doing or that you would like yourself to be doing, but you just aren't able to do because you need to put in more time to be able to do those things. And that's also a similar thing with chess for me too. The game, not the whole that I claim to be at the bottom of your curve, because that's far more than I am at, but in the sense that at first I think when you start playing, you don't really appreciate, or at least in my case, I felt I struggled to see the complexity that I see now. And the more you learn, the more familiar you get with certain patterns, the greater the patterns become because you can see more depth in things and understand different concepts. Like there's a concept called tempo, which is kind of funny, it's the whole idea of I guess you could say who's kind of in control of the play. So for instance, if I capture your piece, I'm capturing with tempo because you have to respond to my move. So I'm in a way dictating the flow of the game. But that's like an interesting concept which at first is very abstract and doesn't really make sense, but when you start to play games and experience it yourself through playing, then I think you can feel that. And that's where a lot of joy comes in because you have a whole new concept to toy with in this thing that you're learning how to do. So yeah, I think it's difficult to define because it's all over the place for whatever different things in personality, but that's another thing.
Interesting.
Appreciation of complexity as you learn more.
I think there's so many different things to talk about here. I feel like we're a bit all over the place. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something interesting though, which in your graph and in mine is the same, and it's this part here. Like it goes down and then it goes up.
Right.
And this going down and going up is like there is a point where you know not enough, and you're enthusiastic about it, and then it decreases the more you know, but you're still not an expert. You're not specialized enough maybe. And then, once you get more and more and more, like maybe you become more happy.
But this can also go down maybe afterwards. Like that's what I'm saying. Maybe like it can oscillate for some people.
I really think that this chart is completely dependent on the environment.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, and the community that comes with a certain discipline.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
literally, like
Yeah.
anything. Where in the world you are, where your family is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such an individual story that I don't think you can draw a graph.
Yeah, I agree.
But I still think we all see a bit of truth in the curves nonetheless, which
Yeah.
is funny,
Yeah,
which is kind of cool.
yeah.
Something to be said about that.
There is some truth in it. All right, we were a little bit all over the place tonight. Lots of thoughts. We are learning. We're on a learning curve. No pun intended. We're on a learning curve here, to figure out what works best. I swear, we filmed 2 more episodes before this one, and they were like the last one we did. We can agree it was way more organized, right?
Yeah.
But well, we're getting there.
Explain ourselves. Like we're trying to have.
No,
a
come on. Yes,
conversation.
we can explain ourselves. We can explain ourselves, and stay tuned for other more exciting episodes where we're going to be more organized, hopefully. But I hope at least from the things we said, that as we said before, like there are some truths in them. We hope maybe from anything that we said you can take something home in thought, and maybe it changes the way you think, because that's what we do at Puzzle, change the way you think. All right, we'll see you next week with another episode, a brand new episode. So I'm sending you and everyone here probably as well kisses, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Some fucking kisses, come here, baby.
Oh my god. I'm going to edit it in the big one. All right, bye.